Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Remember yesterday when I set out to dash to leave you all because I had to see my accountant? It was basically to teach me how to use a new accounting software package. And I must admit, when I hear words such as reconciliation, all I hear is white noise or something that sounds like... But I nodded and smiled in the right places, and I cannot thank the guys enough for being incredibly patient with me. I'm curious, I've always thought that people are either good with numbers or good with words, but seldom do you see anyone that's good with both. Is that true, or have I just been convincing myself with that all along, just to fool myself into thinking that I'm not that bad? So, straw poll time. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, and tell me, are you a numbers person, a words person, or are you just great with both? I digress. I must get a guest on, and ironically, who's also a bit of a bookkeeper too, so I suspect he's going to be good with words and numbers if he's going to be on this podcast. But as a bit of background, as the leading provider of blockchain education, B9lab is at the cutting edge of all new protocols and advancements in the blockchain space. And their team is comprised of leading engineers, developers, entrepreneurs who all share a passion for disruptive technology. And hundreds of major corporations all around the world have counted on B9lab for their blockchain training services. And we've got some big names, including Accenture, Bank of America, Nissan and Fidelity Investments, to name just a few there. And their Blockstars Program trains the very finest new talent in blockchain and helps both rising stars and established companies find the best fit possible. And soon they're going to be launching their own Ethereum Blockstars Program with the goal of finding and trading hundreds of developers and making them job ready. So with this rising demand for blockchain talent and need for quality education is ever present right now, co-founder and community manager of B9lab, Elias Haase, he's going to come on the show today to discuss the ethics of blockchain development, as well as how the community is keeping up with this demand for more and more jobs in this space. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to London here in the UK so we can speak with Elias, who's going to tell us all about B9lab and the tech skills gap for blockchain talent. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, I'm Elias. I'm one of the founders of B9lab, and we are the oldest blockchain education company, having been around for the past 4 years, training developers and managers and decision makers in what it means to work with blockchain, how that works, how to approach it, when it isn't a good idea or when it is a good idea, and how to build decentralized systems.
Wow, 4 years in this industry is like a lifetime, isn't it? It really
Absolutely. It also feels like it. A lot has happened.
Now, B9lab, like you say, delivers quality education, training and talent in blockchain and decentralized applications. But can you just set the scene a little and tell the listeners a little bit more about it, and also the story behind you guys and how you got where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we came out of software development before. So, kind of wind back about 4 years, we were working in software development, and we were working with a customer who was asking a lot about Ethereum. I had been following Bitcoin since about 2011, so I was aware of what was going on there. I had played around with it, and so Ethereum kept coming up. So this was in 2015, about a few months after the white paper had come out in 2014. And so it just sounded really interesting. And then I built a course for our team and some of the contractors we were working with. And we kind of started just advertising the fact that we were training people, and it absolutely exploded. So, we immediately got requests from large companies and started, this was kind of all over Europe. And then we launched our online academy in 2016 with the Ethereum developer course going fast. And we didn't really do any advertising. We, we posted on Reddit and stuff like that. And it absolutely took off. And that's how we found out that we were going to be working in education, which was quite exciting. Most of us are developers, and we were trying to model this based on how do we learn and how would we learn in a perfect environment. So, spent a lot of time on that. So the way that we built it is, especially when you're working with such early day technology, you're going to spend a lot of time with undocumented features or bugs or things are not working exactly for the system that you're working with and stuff like that. So having someone with you who can solve these problems is a big value, because you're going to save so much time. So this is what the mentoring part of our training is like. We help people push through these problems and so on. And then the second aspect is, when you're learning a new technology that doesn't really have any standards out there, where you are kind of one of the first few thousand people to do something with, then that means that it's very difficult to build the confidence to say, yes, I know how this works now. I know how to build something in this. So that's the second aspect that we do with the mentoring. So we do code review, and we build code exercises that help bring out those difficult questions, those difficult problems, and then teach people and give them the confidence that at the end they say, yes, I know that I'm good. I know that I can build it.
I think it's fantastic what you're doing. One of the problems with traditional education is how far behind they are. For example, if we have somebody listening in university now, for 3 years, they're going to be learning skills that could be irrelevant by the time they actually come around to hitting the job market. So where do you begin to shorten those tech skills gaps from the moment of learning to fill those growing number of vacancies on the market? Because I am seeing the rise in boot camps with the promise of a job at the end of it. I mean, is that something that is just going to continue, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting problem, because, I mean, we have a full team that just focuses on building content and keeping it up to date, right? So that's obviously not something that universities can easily replicate. And it is, like you say, like these technologies, you can build something one day and 2 weeks later it's outdated and you have to update or upgrade, or there is something being found out. And especially in the early days of the technology, things are going to shift a lot. So I think there is obviously a place for university education, but I think it's more around how do you approach software projects? How do you learn effectively? What are the basics? And I think it's still important that people learn how computers work and how networking technology works, that kind of stuff. But then I think there is a lot of value around things like boot camps, around things that are focused on what the employers want, or what the kind of market looks like, or what people wanting to start their own companies. To come at it from that perspective, I think can be valuable. And I think it's an ecosystem. We are obviously not replacing traditional universities, but in the same time, we're filling a gap where a new technology comes in and no one really knows how to even work with it. And, we're filling that niche we're filling that gap of teaching people how to work with it. We are helping advance some standards, and we're basically, it's part of the growth of that of the blockchain ecosystem as well, because obviously you need people who are solid, because every time something goes wrong, that kind of reflects poorly, especially on an ecosystem that is that small. So to me, it's just one of the building blocks of the overall education and learning ecosystem when it comes to technology.
Now, we often hear about how traditional roles are disappearing, but not enough about how new job roles are appearing. And there's a huge shortage of tech skills, meaning that those roles are actually sitting unfilled. So hundreds of major corporations around the world have actually counted on you guys for their blockchain training services, including some big names such as Accenture, Bank of America, Nissan and Fidelity Investments, to name but a few. But can you tell me more about this and how you're becoming, in effect, the go-to guys for blockchain training for these companies?
This has all kind of come along organically. So we have this quite often where we look and, we're looking at the students that are signing up, and then we get like a cluster of people signing up, and they are all from a big corporation, they're from a big institution, from an insurance company. And, we then try and obviously create a relationship there as well. But I think it's just a science. So they will obviously have their team looking at, okay, where do we need to look? And one of the things that we focused on from the very beginning, much more than marketing and sales, is the quality of the course. So I would say, and I'm not trying to brag, but it's been important for us from the very beginning to really get it right, because the stakes are relatively high, and we've always kept pushing and we've always kept expanding on the content. So I would say that's probably, that will be one of the reasons why we get approached. And the other thing is that we are not attached to any of the individual of the protocols. We are not attached to any company. We are entirely independent. And so for a large corporation, I think what they do experience a lot in this space is that someone says to them, hey, you should really look into blockchain. And they say, okay. And then that person will say, or that group will say, well, and I tell you exactly which technology to use, because they're invested or because they're tied to that in some way. And so working with a company that does not have any of those conflicts of interest, we found that people appreciate that. And also, we're pretty outspoken about what we think blockchain might be good for and what stage we're in. We're still in the experimentation stage. This is not production ready. This is not to be used for, to run large production systems for customers. This is, building internal skills, building teams, building capacity. And so for us to go in and give feedback on approaching and say, well, we don't think that's a good idea, at least not now, or maybe never, that's a form of trust that builds over time. So we found that's definitely helped us when it comes to working with people in the market.
And I think we should also mention your Blockstars Program, which I believe trains the finest new talent in the blockchain space, helping both rising stars and established companies find the best fit possible. So can you tell me more about this Ethereum Blockstars Program, with the goal of finding and training hundreds of developers and essentially make them job ready? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's been bugging us a little bit for a while is that, our model is based on people paying for their own education, and that's fine. And there are a lot of people who are willing to do that. There are a lot of developers who are willing to invest in that. But we do get approached a lot by people who just don't have access to capital, who can't afford that, who want to break into the market but they can't. Students and people from all over the world. So we've always wanted to find a way to switch that around and get the companies that benefit from getting that talent to pay for their education. So our Ethereum Blockstars program is a first step into that direction, into opening up our courses, into opening up our services a bit more. And so we are planning this year to train 1,000 people at no cost to them, so for free, and to pay for that through sponsors. And this is aimed at companies that have a technology that they want to get in front of developers. So some companies they sponsor because they have a testing product, or they have a deployment product or something like this that they want to get in front of developers. And we will help facilitate that if they help us train people. We're also aiming this at people who want to hire. And really, it's one of I would say it's probably one of the most solid ways that you can go about hiring, because we invite companies that sponsor into the communication channels when we communicate with students, and we share with them the profiles of students that have said, yes, I want to find a job, I want to be approached. So you kind of, if as a hiring manager or as a team lead, if you're looking to hire, you're going to go along these developers as they're learning about Ethereum. So the way this works is we've kind of put out an open call and said you can apply here. So people apply, they go through a screening test where we just check how much experience as developers they already have, and then we pick the best people regardless of any other circumstances. So this is mainly based on existing development background. And we send them through the program And we've already had over 1,000 applications from around 100 countries. So the feedback has been incredible. And we are now kind of putting the finishing touches on the sponsors. So this is the course is launching in March, and we are hoping that we can make this really big and kind of find a way for everyone to benefit from the situation and to help a lot of people break into this ecosystem with a really, really solid skill base, regardless of their monetary background.
And you did hint at the beginning of the interview that it can be difficult working with new technologies because there are no standards or regulations in many cases. So can you tell me more about the role of ethics in blockchain development and why that's important to you guys?
That's an interesting question because I think generally like developer responsibility and ethics is an underestimated topic in overall, because so often there's this expectation that technology and infrastructure is apolitical and we're just building the tools. But especially in blockchain, with public blockchains like, say Bitcoin or Ethereum, this kind of takes on a completely different role. So if you take Ethereum, you can build pieces of code that you can deploy in such a way and run in such a way that you don't have any control over them after you've put them out there. So you can build functioning infrastructure that you can lock yourself out of. And that's obviously one of the big potentials. You can build financial infrastructure and you can prove that you can't kind of change things out afterwards. You can't do a bait and switch. You can't defer people after the fact. But it also means that you have to think really carefully about what you're building, because it might be around for as long as that blockchain is operational, for as long as that network is operational, which, is kind of open-ended. So if I'm building a piece of infrastructure, if I'm building a program for people to interact with, it might be that, I can't stop it if it's used for something that I didn't want it to be used for. And so we work with the students going through the program to alert them to these potential problems. And we also try to get them to think about, to deeply think about the kind of things that they're building, which means, who has power within the network? How is that communicated? Is that clear? What if people don't want to participate anymore? Can they withdraw? Can people dissent? And so it's all of these different aspects. And so we work with one of the foremost experts in the space, Jaya Clara Brecker, who's just had a book come out. It's an annotated version of the original Bitcoin white paper by Ignota Books, which I definitely recommend. So she's done a lot of work on ethics and power in blockchain. So we work with her to build a module of the course, and we also work with her to build an oath, which we voluntarily, we invite people to take a look at and sign. And this oath is basically, the idea behind it is not to pledge to any specific way of behaving. It is just to pledge to ask yourself a list of questions before you deploy something into the world. And those are questions around what I said before, power structures and the ability to change infrastructure and the ability to not agree and things like that. And I think this is important because, developers make a million little decisions every week, and that makes it tapestry. And each decision in itself seems inconsequential, but as a woven product, it has an impact on people's lives. The way we use Facebook, the way we use a messaging app, the way we use these kind of things has an impact. We adapt our culture to how these tools work, and the tools are based on what a group of people thinks is the best way to go about it. And so this kind of thing is important because it has an impact on culture.
And as well as that oath that you make people sign, is there any secret handshakes I should know about as well?
Well, it wouldn't be very secret if I told you.
Oh, man. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you also recently unveiled a new product called Insight. And for people listening that have not heard of that, could you just tell me a little bit more about what you're doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been spending a lot of time building our course library for professionals, for managers, for decision makers, who not developers, but who are the ones who are going to be making the decision and charting the strategy in blockchain. And that's still really difficult because it's such a technical subject. And you're going to hear so many different opinions. So it's very difficult for decision makers to kind of chart the course. And the Insights subscription package is this is our offer to that. It's basically, it's a blockchain foundation course with a lot of images, with a lot of videos. We're trying to really approach this. We're trying to give you an understanding that goes as technical as possible, but more from the strategic side. And then we have different courses that help people from different industries think about strategies in their industry. So, for example, we've got a course for blockchain and supply chain management, and so we have different use cases and different ideas. And the idea is that you subscribe, and we keep building new course content. You can ask questions as you go through the course. There is an essay that is being reviewed by humans. So the same as with developers, we're trying to give people the feedback that gives them the confidence that what they are doing is solid. So it's basically we're really trying to give people a foundation so that they can make the decisions and chart the path for that company.
Now, blockchain has an incredibly strong and passionate community that we all know about. I mean, but is there anything that you think they could do more or less of to help promote blockchain education? I
think there is still, for many of the people in many of these areas, they already know how it works. So they're paying lip service to education, but when it comes to investing in education, that is still a different question. But I think overall, this is definitely developing. And some of the foundations are creating grants that make this more accessible, that makes this more possible. And we're trying to do our part. And we're trying to bring solid education to different communities, different blockchain protocols, and different groups of people. I think, as with a lot of topics in tech, people get very passionate, as you were saying, and that can be kind of overwhelming for newcomers. So I think this is still a challenge for some of the technical teams to make it easier for people to kind of slowly wade in, especially if it's around open source development and things like that. So I think, more work is being done and more work needs to be done in creating kind of less intense ways into the community and spaces where people can feel safe and contributing and learning and making mistakes. And I think that's really one of the key things, is to allow people to make mistakes without shouting them down for it, because we all learn making mistakes. I think this is something that is slowly changing, but it definitely needs more work.
Fantastic. Well, before I let you go, is there anything else that you can share with us about your future plans at B9lab, or anything on the horizon, or maybe just a teaser that you could leave us with?
So we will be doing more things like the Ethereum Blockstars Program, and we will be targeting different protocols. We'll be working with new partners, so more courses are coming out. We have a few interesting things in the pipeline. So I would say, if you're a developer and you want to stay on top of things, we have an offering that's called B9lab One, which is basically a subscription to all of our courses, and you can learn as much as you want. We've got a lot of things, and any new course that comes in, you can take. So I think in terms of just staying on top of things and diversifying and broadening, that's a really good way to do it, and this is what we've tried to design it for. I think so for us this year is about making the learning process and high quality training more accessible to as many people from all over the world as possible. So you'll see more from us in that.
Well, if we do have any developers listening, or equally we have some newcomers that just want to find out a bit more information and are thinking about changing their career or upskilling or changing their skills, where can they find you guys online? And can you also maybe point them in the direction of the best way of contacting a member of your team if they've got any further questions or just want somebody to talk to?
Absolutely. So you find us on b9lab.com. You can also speak to us on Twitter at B9lab. You can find us on Telegram at B9lab. And we work with people who are learning all the time. So don't feel shy getting in touch, asking questions. There are no stupid questions. This is all new for everyone. So if you go on the website, there is a little chat box. You can talk to us. We'll try to do our best. And I would love to see you in the community. We've got, 1,500 people at the moment, in our community, and we've got hundreds of people who are active. There's a lot of conversation going on. You can talk to other people. You can find business partners. We see people hiring each other. We see people starting businesses. So it's not just the learning, it's also the community. Super constructive space. I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's a pretty cool place to be. So I'd love to see you contribute. I'd love to see you around. I'd love to talk to you.
Fantastic. I absolutely love everything that you guys stand for here. And it's so refreshing to hear that you guys have got this open-armed community, which is not intimidating for newcomers, and actually inviting them in and wanting to help them. It's just so important, because for technology to be a success, or any new technology to be a success, it's about bringing everyone on board for the ride. And it's just so refreshing to hear that you guys completely get that. So a big thank you for coming on and sharing your story with me today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
What a fantastic story there. Another timely reminder that, yes, there are jobs disappearing. We're hearing about them every day. But there are thousands and thousands of jobs waiting to be taken. But there is a skill shortage. Again, those big, scary tech headlines that you see on your news feeds, they don't tell you of great companies like B9lab. They are training people so they can take up these roles in the industry. It's also worth pointing out, with a background in artificial intelligence, neural networks and evolutionary computing, Elias has more than 10 years' experience building and running digital products. And as a developer by training, he's also previously worked on alternative finance and fintech building platforms for crowdfunding startups, including crowd investment, crowd equity and crowd lending. But this episode is not about him and his wealth of experience. It's about what he's passing on down to the next generation of tech workers. And I do say next generation. These opportunities are available to anyone of any age. So if anyone just as businesses are trying to use technology to get ahead of their competitors, I think it's equally important for employees to look out there and think, if I can get these kind of qualifications under my belt, I can future-proof my own career and get a pretty good salary out of it too. But hey, I'm just thinking out loud as always. It's easy for me to say, sat here talking into a microphone, but I want to hear about your real world experiences, the challenges that you face, and equally the opportunities ahead. And you can share all that with me by emailing me directly at techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, and you can pop by my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, if you do need my help with anything. But that's the end of another episode. I will return tomorrow with another guest from another industry, and we'll talk about other challenges and opportunities and how technology is ultimately working best when it brings people together. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.